And good morning. How's everybody doing today? Dr. Chris Roddenberry coming to you live from Willow Springs, North Carolina. It is 9 a.m. on the last day of February 2023. It's a beautiful day outside. The weather looks like it's going to be nice. Got a little sun going on. And I'm here with you, so it's always a great day. How's everybody doing out there? If you're out in the audience and want to go ahead and check in and say hello, please feel free to type in the chat board and let me know how you are doing. It's great to see you. It is exam week, so we have an exam coming up. I know you're probably excited about that. Ha ha, not. Um, but go ahead and make sure you are prepared for this open book, open note exam that we are having this coming weekend. All right. If you have any questions about that, you can ask me Thursday night when we do our weekly webinar, or you can send me a text or chat me up on Teams. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start on chapter 9. Remember, we are skipping chapter 8. We are skipping chapter 8. We are skipping chapter 8. So do not worry about chapter 8. This week we are going to move to chapter 9 and talk a little bit about friendship and love. So that's the basis of today's lecture and this week's discussions. So let's go ahead and, if we can, get started. So we're going to talk a little bit about what romantic attraction looks like. We're going to talk a little bit about commitment, not love, but we're going to talk about something that's a little bit bigger, commitment. And then we're going to talk about a theory of what love is, if you will. And we're going to talk a little bit about the internet and close relationships. I'm going to be quite honest with you. I did my pair bonding in 1994, long before the internet was really a thing. So you're actually going to have to tell me something about what internet dating is like, because I really don't know. And then we'll talk a little bit about loneliness. I talk to students quite frequently who report feeling a little bit lonely, and I'd be curious to get your feelings on what makes you lonely and how you think you could rescue yourself from that. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Close relationships. They are the most important relationships in your life. They're those interdependent, long-lasting lives that relationships that you get involved in. They come in lots of different forms. Typically, when we think close relationships, most people think about romantic relationships and marriage. This is true, but you know what? Having people that you know for years in any setting really is a form of close relationship. So the people that you've worked with for 10, 15, 20 years, in fact, I hear people talking about work spouses now at work. It's such a close relationship for so long. And you know what? Friendship is the same thing. It has some of these wonderful, close, intimate characteristics. So when we talk about close relationships, and most of today we're going to talk about romantic relationships, but I do want you to know that close relationships, which are an important part of your psychological health, are just broad, long lasting relationships that you might have. Now, here's the paradox of close relationships: the people that you love the most are also going to be the people that you hate the most, in a sense, right? So the people that you love are the ones, and the ones that make you feel so good, so secure, so wanted are also the ones that make you feel such intense negative emotions like rage, jealousy, and despair. Nobody can hurt you like the person you love. And that's sort of what we would call the paradox of relationships. These close relationships, they are absolutely essential for human psychological functioning and well being. But at the same time, these close relationships are the source of some of the most negative emotions that we will feel as human beings. Now, a short note before we get started. Your book does talk about this thing called heterosexism. When we begin to talk about close relationships, being that I am a heterosexual male and the world is designed for, in a sense, a heterosexual majority, when we talk about these things, a lot of times what you're going to find is people focus on heterosexual relationships. Psychological research is no different. Now, that is changing, and a lot more research is being done to understand the difference between uh, heterosexual and homosexual relationships, just like there is uh, research to figure out whether or not females and males and heterosexuals and homosexuals have different ways of thinking than one another. There is research, cultural psychological research, that is looking at that right now. But what you should know is a lot of the old school research that I'm talking about today was designed for and intended to explain heterosexual relationships, for better or for worse. Now, the first thing your book does is talk about some old school social psychology. I found this very, very exciting because this was some of the first stuff that I learned when I got to graduate school in 1994. We started talking about close attraction. And this research is, wow, let's see, the 60s, the 50s and 60s. So this is some 70-year-old research. The research was simply directed at what are the social factors that affect how and why we choose romantic partners and friends. This was the question way back in the day. Now, there were people who were looking at personality styles and personality similarity and how that affected uh, individual qualities and how that affects attraction. But social psychologists really wanted to look at sort of the general social factors that might affect people's attraction to one another. And what you're going to find is there are three broad principles you should know about. We tend to develop relationships, romantic or friendship, based on three primary qualities: people who are closest to us, people who we see a lot, and people who we find attractive. Those are the three principles. If you want to find love, if you want to get that person, that romantic interest of yours to fall in love with you, if you want that person to be your best friend, you need to follow these three basic principles. Proximity. Turns out we're more likely to develop friendships who are close geographically or spatially. So if you look over here on this side, there's a picture. What they did was they randomly assigned students to sit in seats in a classroom, a psychology classroom, kind of like the psychology class that you're taking right now, except it was seated. And they had these students sit in these seats. And if you'll notice, some of these seats are close together. The red seats are really, really close together. The people in the black seats are sort of close together. And those people in the blue seats are spread as far apart as possible. They then had these students go through this entire semester and followed them up a year later. And what they found was students who sat closer together in a classroom were more likely to be friends 1 year later. Same exact thing with, I read a study from the 1960s where they found the same thing in married student housing. People who lived in married student housing apartments tended to develop friendships with the ones that they were in close proximity to. And the people who were most popular, had the most friends in that neighborhood, were the people who lived adjacent to stairwells or on the bottom floors, because people passed them and were close to them all of the time. So proximity, it's a very important key. Now, the thing is, think about that proximity. We are now in an internet world where there is no space. We are close and yet we are distant. How is that going to affect how we engage in relationships? Are we, quote, physically close anymore? We think about the internet as being close to everybody, but are you really close to everybody, or are you really distant from everyone? Think about that. Now, the second thing I did want to tell you about is this thing called the mere exposure effect. It turns out that the more you see someone, the more you see something, the more positively you will begin to feel about said object. Simply becoming familiar with an object makes you like it in more. And this works with physical attraction too. The more you see someone, the more positive your evaluation of them will become. Now, I will put a small caveat right here. There's this weird opposite phenomenon called environmental spoiling. It turns out that familiarity just magnifies the initial feeling. If I initially have a positive opinion towards you, if I think you're kind of attractive, the more I see you, the more attractive I will rate you, the more I will like you. On the other hand, if my initial attraction is super duper is negative, okay, then the more I'm around you, the more negative that opinion will occur. So basically, I'd like to say familiarity just magnifies the initial feeling that you have towards one another. But in terms of social reaction, social relations, and attraction, your research talks about this mere exposure effect. Familiarity can breed attraction. And then, of course, physical attractiveness. You all have probably been catfished by someone who sent you a picture pretending to be better looking, more attractive than they really were because they knew how important physical attractiveness is. And this is a very, very important quality in predicting attraction, especially for males, both gay and straight, than for females. However, before you lose hope, research suggests that it's not the most important factor for males and females. At least that's what they say. Behavior sometimes shows different. When you ask people what's important, they're going to tell you that kindness, humor, and intelligence are more important than physical attractiveness. However, I would say when people act out and do what they do, I'm not sure that people's actual behavior follows their stated beliefs. So, the reason I told you about this is because there is this interesting phenomenon known as the matching hypothesis. Research from the 1970s, I forget, Sandra Bem, was it? I forget the name of the lady who did the research on attraction. But what she found is that people tend to pair up with others based upon an objective level of physical attractiveness. Beautiful people together and not so attractive people together as well. Now, what she found is that the reason this tends to happen is when people are put into a situation where they have to gain acceptance. They did this experiment where people could pick partners for a social gathering. In one situation, the partner had to agree to attend the social gathering with them. In the other situation, they didn't. And what they found is in the situation where the person didn't have to gain compliance, the person was automatically assigned to them, people tended to pick the most attractive person possible. On the other hand, when they had to gain compliance from the other person to go to the social event, what they tended to find was people tended to sort out by objective levels of physical attractiveness. All right, so these are sort of the things that affect how we are drawn to people. Now, a sort of an interesting thing that your book talks about, uh, we're going to talk a little bit for a couple of minutes about what we might call exchange theory. Um, One way you can conceive of close relationships, love, and there's been a lot of research. You can think of social relations as sort of a situation where people can exchange strengths and weaknesses to form larger bonds that are more successful. So, in in you can think of the reason that human beings tend to like to be group animals, pack animals, is because there are advantages, survival advantages that are transmitted to us by working together. Human beings are actually kind of weak. We can't fly, we're not very strong, we can't run fast, we don't see very well at night. The only way that human beings can survive is to work together. And so a lot of psychologists look at how the dynamics of human beings work together in close relationships, because these bonds, these group bonds that we're talking about, are created in close relationships. Remember, families, friends, lovers. These represent sort of our group, our pack that we use as as an evolutionary skill, if you will. Now, so there's research to sort of ask the question, why exactly do human beings, uh, what are the transfers of value that occur in close relationships? Now, there's actually a theory which talks about attraction using sort of this resource point of view. And it's described over here, the resource exchange theory. Now, if you'll notice, it's an evolution-based theory proposing that in heterosexual dating, males trade occupational status for physical attractiveness in females. Now, this is a joke that we all talk about, that we all laugh about. You know, we say that the ladies want the fellow who has tons of money, and we say that men tend to focus on young, beautiful partners who are physically attractive. And this represents what we might call the resource exchange model, which was elucidated by this fellow named David Buss in 1988. And he said, you can think about sort of these differences that we see between males and females. What you'll notice is that females tend to pair bond with older males, right? Older males tend to pair bond with younger females. Um, and you can see that sort of there may be these sort of patterns where we look at resources and attractiveness and use, and males and females tend to sort of pair up in these ways that suggest females are looking for resources and males are looking for attractiveness. Now, this guy, David Buss, says this makes perfect sense within an evolutionary context. He said, and it really, it depends upon, it's all based on the idea of spreading one's genes, so to speak. And he uses what he calls the parental investment theory. Now, here's what he argues. He argues that for male, the best mating strategy is to spread as many seed as possible with as many partners as possible. Now, here's the idea. For a male, you can make 100 female of the species pregnant at one time. Doesn't happen, but I mean, hypothetically, that could happen. And so for males, the best strategy for spreading their genetic material is to impregnate as many females as possible, but not be invested with any one female. And so it's better for the male to look for females that are very, very fertile, and physical appearance can be one way of assessing fertility. On the other hand, uh, David Buss argues that females have evolved with the idea that a female has limited reproductive capability. A female at most, can have 15 or 20 children. If one was to start producing at the youngest age and go continuously. Now, that may sound like a lot, 15 or 20 children, but compare that with the male who could literally impregnate thousands, hundreds of thousands, uh, you know what I mean, hypothetically, could spread a seed that wide. And so the idea is for females, their best reproductive strategy is to care for the young that they have. The male, have as many as possible and don't worry about them. For the female, since you're limited in the number of offspring you can have, the female's reproductive strategy, her evolutionarily divine strategy, is going to be to find uh, resources for that child, that offspring that she is attached to, that she has. And so the idea here is that maybe the difference between male and female sort of attraction strategies that we see in modern in the world, not in the modern society, in the world, represent sort of evolutionary strategies. So, why exactly are we attracted to the people we're attracted to? Well, it depends. Proximity is one thing, familiarity is one thing. Uh, physical attractiveness. However, there are differences in physical attractiveness, and this evolutionary theory of resource exchange sort of explains why we might be attracted to certain people. So, really, why do we find the people attractive that we do? I'm not sure, but the answer can be found somewhere within these 4 points for you and for everyone else. So you can think about those and see which of those determined why you fell in love with the person that you fell in love with. Was it because you lived close to them? Was it because you saw them every day at school? Were they just absolutely beautiful? Or did they somehow represent a resource that you feel like you need? I don't know. Now, in carrying on with this idea of close relationships as having evolutionary value, and the evolutionary value coming from the cooperation that occurs in relationships. A lady named Carol Rusbold, and I know her very well because she was actually a professor at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. She's since passed. Um, but she was one who developed a social exchange theory based on an old theory called interdependence. And what she developed was what she called the investment model of close relationships. And what if you think about it, you can go into a relationship and you can talk about all the different qualities of a relationship and you can begin to assign values to those qualities. And then for Carol, you can assign value, and then just like a mathematical equation, you can see if a relationship adds up to happiness or to sadness. Right? And so this commitment model, this investment model developed by Carol Rusbult, is based on social exchange theory, and it argues that when we look at people's relationships, what we find is that happiness is not always the best predictor of who is going to be in a relationship. Lots of unhappy people are in relationships, lots of happy people, seemingly happy people leave relationships. Why does this happen? Carol Rusbult has a model which provides us several insights which might help us explain why relationships persist or don't persist. Right. So if you look underneath below me, what Dr. Rusbult did was she would go in and she would ask people to evaluate different aspects of their relationship. Is it a positive? Is it a negative? How positive is it? How negative is it? And she could sort of, if you will, parameterize people's uh, relationships, the parts of people relationships, and she came up with an equation which she said was a good predictor of whether or not people will stay in a close relationship. So, what determines whether or not somebody breaks off with that long relation, that long friendship that they have, or that long romantic relationship they have? Why do some people decide to get divorced and some people don't get divorced? According to Carol, you can use this cost benefit model to understand that. Now, here's the deal. If you look at it, she argues that you can think about every relationship as having the rewards, the things that your partner does that you really like. And they also have costs, the things that your partner does that you don't like, right? You can think of those as the rewards and costs. And you can subtract the costs from the rewards and come out with a quality we might call your outcome quality. How much happiness are you getting on a daily basis from your partner? However, it's more complex than that. What Carol Rusbult suggested is we take these outcomes and we subtract from it our expectations of what we should be getting, our comparison level. If you think about it, some people have very high expectations of what they should be getting from their relationship. Some people think their relationship should be perfect. Other people are willing to accept far less happiness. And that's what we would call your comparison level, if you will, your expectations in your relationship. So it's not necessarily the rewards and the costs in your relationship, but it's how those rewards and costs compare to what you as a person would habitually expect, your comparison level. And so we can take your outcomes and subtract your expectations from them. And she says, we come up with this thing called your relationship satisfaction. Your relationship satisfaction. So, this is what you're getting from your relationship minus what you expect from your relationship. And if you're getting more than you expect, you're very satisfied. If you're getting less than you expect, you're not quite as satisfied. So she argues that you can think of the relationship as including this satisfaction that compares what you're getting with what you expect, but it gets more complex than that. She says, actually, not only do we compare our outcomes with what we think we should be getting in this relationship, we actually compare it with what we think we would get in other relationships. Now, that might be what do I think a different wife, would I expect a better situation if I were to find another wife? Would I expect a better situation if I were alone and didn't have any wife? Uh, and the same thing for you. What would you expect if you picked a different partner? I know each and every one of you, you have a partner, but there was an alternative that you didn't pick, right? You either had the choice between two romantic partners and you picked A instead of B, or you picked partner A instead of being lonely. That alternative that you didn't pick, you still have a belief about what it would have been like. Carol Rusbult calls that the comparison level for alternatives. And she says not only do you compare your outcomes with what you expect the person you're with should be giving you, but you also compare it with what you think you could get somewhere else. And that's the comparison level for alternatives. Now, these things take away from your satisfaction. So I have some rewards that my partner gives me minus the costs. And whatever that function is the outcomes, how much positivity I'm getting from this partner. But from that positivity, I subtract what I think this person should be giving me. And then I also compare it with what I think somebody else could give me, right? So I've got all these things coming out of this positivity that I feel towards my partner. Now, if you'll notice, there's one final thing: investments. Investments actually increase your level of commitment. And so your investments are things that you would lose if you left that relationship. If you've been with a partner for a long time, you will probably notice y'all have mutual friends together. You would have to divide up those friends if you break up. If you get divorced, you're going to lose your house and the home situation that you've got. There are a lot of things that you've built into your relationships, friends, shared experiences, our song, right? All of these things you've added into this relationship over time. And these are things that are only in this relationship. If you leave this relationship, you will lose these things. They're called investments, right? So, what she argues is that the more investments you have, the more likely you are to stay in the relationship. And so, really, what causes us to stay in a relationship? Is it how many outcomes, how positive the outcomes are in this relationship? No, it's more complex than that. Okay, is it the outcomes minus what I think I could get somewhere else? Yes, but it's more complex than that. It's the outcomes minus what you think you should get, plus the things that you've added into this relationship that make this relationship special or different or unique. Now, what Carol Rusbolt would do is when she would go to battered women's shelters, and you know what she found? It wasn't the outcomes, how many rewards the ladies were getting, that determined whether or not they were going back to a relationship. What she found, it was the lack of alternatives and the children that tended to keep women in abusive relationships. Now, the lack of economic viability, the lack of jobs and financial independence kept women in these relationships. What's that? That's a low comparison level of alternatives. These women also would stay in abusive relationships because they had kids and they didn't want to lose their families. Those are investments. So when she talked to women in these shelters, she found that it wasn't necessarily how good the relationship was, but it was these other more exchange related factors that predicted staying and leaving behaviors. Now, not only did she do this in battered women's shelters, but she would go into uh, uh, healthy relationships with college students. She would have them answer all these questions. How many rewards are you getting from this person? What are they like? What kinds of things don't you like about this person? Uh, what do you expect this person should give you? What do you expect you should get from other people? So she would ask people to list their rewards, their costs, their comparison level for alternatives, and their investments. And what she found was that she could predict whether or not these college students would still be in their college romantic relationship a year later. Okay, what are the insights? Commitment is what predicts people's relationships, not how happy they are, but how committed they are. And commitment is affected by your beliefs about how good you are, what you think you could get in this relationship and in other relationships. And commitment is also predicted by the length and the things that you put into a relationship that you would lose if the relationship were to end. Okay, on the homework and on the exam, I'll ask you really just to give me these three non intuitive explanations, insights for why people stay in relationships. Why? Because you might ask yourself, why does X and why does that couple stay together when he treats her bad or she treats him so bad? It's not always about the outcomes. You can look in it and you can find that there's something about the comparison level of the one person. They don't think they can get any better. Or maybe there's something built into the relationship that they just can't get away from. Or maybe the person is so wealthy or so attractive or has so many rewards that it overwhelms all of these other concerns. People stay in committed relationships for lots of different reasons. And this social exchange model provides a nice way to sort of conceptualize the factors that might affect people's relationship behavior. Now, a fellow named Robert Sternberg actually was interested in the nature of love and describing what exactly it is when we talk about love. You ever notice you'll say things like, I love my boyfriend or girlfriend. I love my parents. I love my best friend, Ed. I love ice cream. You ever notice we use that word love to refer to lots of different situations? We use it to refer to people that we are sexually interested in. We use it to refer to people we are filial interested in as parents. We use it for friends. We use it for food. We use this word love all over the place. Furthermore, if you've been married for or been with a partner for a long time, you'll notice that the way you feel about that person changes and evolves over time, your feelings of love for that person. So Sternberg was interested in trying to understand what exactly is it that we're talking about when we say the word love, and how is the concept of love such that we can use it in these wildly different situations. And so he uh, he sort of conceptualized love. If you think about it, he said you can think about love as sort of having, if you will, these three sort of qualities. Uh, One might be passion. And that's what we typically, when we say, I love somebody, you're talking about the passion, the sexual passion you feel towards it. Sometimes when we talk about love, we mean that we share things with them and we share our most intimate details with this person. And we have a sense of shared connection that makes us intimately familiar with one another. And then, you know what? We use love to refer to people to whom we are with through thick and thin, people whom we are committed to. So, what Sternberg argued, if you think about love, and when we're talking about that consummate love, that perfect love, the perfect blend of love, he said it's really a blend of three qualities: passion, intimacy, and commitment. Okay? He said, however, you can think about relationships where we use the word love as sort of varying in the levels of these three qualities that they have, right? So when you're talking about your love for your parents, you may be talking about sort of liking, you may be talking about intimacy and commitment, not so much passion. You may fall in love at first sight. And really, that's just mostly passion because you don't even know this person, but you may use the word, I fell in love at first sight. That's all passion, right? Sometimes people stay in relationships and they say, I love this person, even though they don't hardly talk to them and they really feel no attraction to them. They sort of have what you might call this empty love that's just nothing but commitment. I'm here because I've always been here. You can think of friendship, empty love, and falling in love at first sight as just variations in these three qualities that are a part of love. And so this has become known as the triangular uh, theory of love. And you know, again, romantic love, and he tries to conceptualize all the different ways uh, that we might fall in love. So sometimes we use love to refer to somebody we really like. That's just intimacy. Sometimes we use love to talk about somebody that we've been with for 70 years that we're not really and we're not interested in sex or any of that stuff. So we're just companions now, right? Sometimes we use the word love to talk about somebody that we're just chained to. It's empty love. Occasionally, we may fall in love with someone overnight, and we're talking about infatuation, infatuous love. And then sometimes, if you meet somebody, you know, that first 6 months to a year of your relationship when you're doing nothing but having passionate love making and telling all your secrets, you're engaged in that romantic wonderfulness that is the beginning part of all relationships. So, in a sense, what he tried to do was conceptualize love in a way that it could fit all the different ways in which human beings like to use the word love. And I think this is sort of a nifty way to describe, to conceptualize love. And then you see there in the middle, he's got that thing called consummate love, perfect love, the love that has everything. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think consummate love probably exists in the real world for very long. It's hard to maintain these three orientations towards the same target for a lifetime, right? Now, the neat thing about this is if you go in and ask people about their relationships, you can ask them to tell you how committed they feel to their partner, how much they share, and how intimate they are with their partner. And then you can even ask them questions about their passionate activities and feelings towards their partner. And what you're going to see is that really relationships over time are going to sort of show this typical pattern. And you know, a lot of people in relationships after 7, 8, 9, 10 years may leave a relationship because they say the passion is gone, the spark is gone, the fire is gone. I've fallen out of love for you. what these people are talking about a lot of times, they're talking about they're missing this aspect of their love relationship that they used to have. This is the passion. And if, I've been married 28 years, 32 years. I've talked to other people who've been married a long time. What you're going to see is that crazy passion that you feel for your romantic partner. It peaks and then it drops. This is the normal course of life. No, we haven't fallen out of love. No, the spark isn't gone. No, this is just typically the typical pattern that you're going to see in people as they describe their love relationships. But what you're going to notice is that intimacy and commitment are going to increase throughout uh, a relationship. So, how's love going to change over time? You're going to meet that person, and the first thing you're going to do is become wildly passionate about that person. And as you do that, you're going to be telling them all of your secrets and sharing all of your deepest feelings. And this passion and this intimacy is going to begin to build commitment, a sense of responsibility towards this person. And this intimacy and this commitment will just continue to rise. But what's going to happen in the course of the relationship is to some degree that white hot fire that you feel for that person, it does tend to dim a little bit. This is just the normal course of relationships. Now, your book talks about suggestions for helping relationships last. You know what? I always hate saying stuff like that, even though I've been married for a long time. To say this kind of stuff, I don't know. It's hard to know what makes a relationship last or what makes a relationship not last. But your book's going to suggest that, you know what, try not to rush things and get to know the other person before making a long term commitment. One of the things that I see occasionally on social media, some of my friends, especially my younger friends, will go through their relationships online, posting about them. And I had a colleague recently. I guess this person is in their 30s, and they just had a relationship. They met a person, and within a month, this person was posting these social media uh, comments on there that suggested they were ride or die person, as if they'd known this human being for a long time and were really committed. And I was just shocked at the statements of commitment and fidelity this quickly into a relationship. I'm not saying they're bad, but to say that you're ready to be a ride or die partner forever and ever and ever, 2 weeks after meeting a person, I would say is maybe rushing into the commitment end of the relationship. And your book's going to suggest that. And like I said, my experience earlier this semester with a younger colleague on social media watching their relationship fizzle out, I saw this. And I'm going to see people. I guess people can get these feelings of intimacy and commitment really quickly online, dating in online forums, because you can say anything and present to yourself in certain ways. I think a lot of people really rush into these online relationships and crash them equally as quickly, right? Now, here's the thing, each and every one of the partners that you're going to meet has positive qualities and negative qualities. What I find some of my younger online colleagues do, because they have so many possible matches um, online, is that when they find a negative quality in a partner that they don't like, they immediately dump that partner. So they'll start dating. Again, I had another colleague a bit younger than me, and I noticed that this colleague was very quick. They would date people, and as soon as the person had one quality, one difference, one thing that wasn't different that they didn't like, they were on to the next partner. And I think, I'm not sure if social media makes that possible, but one of the things that you need to do if you want to stay married 32 years is focus on and emphasize the positive qualities of your partner and your relationship. There will always be negatives if you accentuate the negative, if you focus on the negative. If you brag to people about the negative, that will take over and ruin your relationship. Instead, focus on the things you like about your partner. Be sure to talk about these qualities positively in front of other people. So I like to emphasize the positive qualities of my spouse in front of other people. And she does the same for me. And then we nag and bitch a little bit too. But the idea is the more you can emphasize the positive qualities, the more you can focus on those benefits, the happier your relationship is going to be. Uh, you know, I can't say this enough. You are going to fight with your partner over 3 decades. You got to learn how to fight well. And by fighting well, I don't mean winning. I mean learning how to fight without ruining a relationship. A lot of people like to make big personal statements. You always, you never. They like to use insults and they like to, when they get into arguments with people, they like to hurt the other person emotionally. It's a real easy habit to get into because, like, you are so close to this person, you really know what their triggers are and how you can hurt their feelings. Don't do it. Don't do it. You have to learn how to fight fair, so to speak. When me and my wife argue, we argue about the facts, the issue at hand. We try not to. I guess it's going to happen occasionally, but you just have to avoid saying mean, hurtful things directly at your person, disowning their character, stuff like that. You have to learn how to engage in effective conflict management, right? And then finding ways to bring novelty to long term relationships. Yes, human beings do habituate. Uh, you got to find a way to grow and be interesting in your relationship. That's hard to do. It's a skill that needs to be cultivated. It doesn't really come naturally. But one of the things you have to do is be good at trying to reinvent your relationship in small and new ways. So, maybe we go out to this restaurant and after a couple of years we change to a new activity. Or, sometimes my wife and I'll go hiking. She hates hiking, but I'll occasionally take her. She'll do it just for me. Occasionally, she's talked me into going to getting manicures and pedicures with her. We try to do new and weird and different things to sort of bring novelty to our relationship when we can. It's hard, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard, but it's worth it if you can. And I'm not saying that because I've been married for 32 years. The research in psychology suggests that successful marriages actually produce health and well-being benefits for people. So you're going to want to engage in healthy and successful long-term relationships. Um, wow. This is where I get a little bit lost. Um, what do we do? Um, uh, you know what? Let's actually talk about this. This is what we're going to talk about in class on. Actually, you know what? We're going to talk about the internet and uh, ending of relationships and loneliness on Thursday night in class. So let's go ahead and save those for Thursday night in webinar, okay? Because we are at 9:48 and I'm about out of time. I see we've got a couple of people in the audience. If you're in the audience, go ahead and type a hello and let me know you're here. I always like to know who's in the audience, who's visiting with me. I don't get many visitors. Oh, look at that. 4 views, 3 concurrent viewers. Look at that. I got a couple of people. All right, fantastic. Well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say, oh, Eric Ensign, thank you very much. Hello to you. Thanks for stopping in. I just want to say it's good talking to you again. It's week 8. Remember, exam week coming up. Webinar on Thursday night. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me a text or bump me on Microsoft Teams. Hi, Iris. Good to see you. Well, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye. Have a great day, and I hope to see you Thursday night. Take care.